All right, everyone ready for this? Today we are diving into a story that, might make you kind of look over your shoulder about those old school records tucked away somewhere.
Yeah.
We're talking PowerSchool.
Huh.
Yeah, that PowerSchool. The one that's in like thousands of schools across the U.S. You definitely know a student, a teacher. Maybe you even used it yourself back in the day.
Yeah. And it's not just about remembering those locker combinations
Yeah.
from high school. We're talking about a massive data breach. Like cybersecurity experts are calling this a treasure trove for identity thieves.
Mm.
And the information that's exposed in this breach, it goes way beyond just, names and addresses.
Okay, so we're talking a system that thousands of schools use,
Mm-hmm.
holding data on potentially millions of students, past and present.
Yeah.
And now we're finding out hackers have had their hands in the digital cookie jar.
Yeah,
This has got to be like a parent's worst nightmare.
it is.
So what exactly did they get away with?
Okay, so imagine this. Sensitive information dating back to when some schools first started using PowerSchool.
Wow.
Potentially decades ago. We're talking social security numbers, we're talking birth dates, addresses, even sensitive demographic information.
Oh, no.
And get this, there's evidence that even teacher login credentials might have been compromised.
Wait, teacher logins too?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a whole other layer of concern. I mean, what could someone even do with that kind of access?
Right, so that's what's so troubling. Having those teacher credentials could potentially unlock even more sensitive data, internal school communications, grading systems.
Oh, gosh.
Who knows what else? It's like giving a thief a master key.
So how did this even happen? Did PowerSchool just like leave the back door wide open?
Well, it appears that hackers got into PowerSchool's customer support portal using what's being called stolen credentials.
Okay.
And that in itself is a red flag, right?
Right.
But what's even more alarming is that this breach wasn't just some quick smash and grab. Reports are indicating they had access for a significant period,
Wow.
potentially weeks, which allowed them to really dig deep into those historical records.
This is all starting to feel like a slow motion train wreck, but hold on. I read that PowerSchool claims the breach started in late December. But haven't some districts been reporting suspicious activity, going back even further?
Yeah, you're right, and that's where the timeline gets murky. Some district logs are suggesting that things might have been amiss even earlier than December.
Wow.
And to make matters worse, PowerSchool has been criticized for a lack of transparency.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've acknowledged the breach, and they've identified some affected schools and districts.
Okay.
But they haven't released a full list or disclosed the total number of records compromised.
Oh, wow. So they're claiming the stolen data was deleted, but
Right.
come on, how can we really know for sure?
Exactly.
Like this whole trust us approach just isn't cutting it.
Yeah, it's definitely raising eyebrows, especially in the cybersecurity community. Mark Racine, he's the CEO of Rooted Solutions, he kind of put it bluntly, called it a troubling gap in security. And he emphasized that even former PowerSchool clients might be at risk.
What?
Think about it. Schools switch systems all the time.
Sure.
Where does that old data go?
So we're talking about a pool of vulnerable people that's like exponentially larger than we initially thought. This is huge.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about some kids' names and addresses here. We're talking social security numbers, like the building blocks of someone's identity, potentially exposed for who knows how long. And this isn't just some abstract concept, right? This has like real world consequences for people.
Absolutely, yeah. Just look at Rancho Santa Fe School District in California or the Menlo Park City School District. They've publicly reported being hit by this breach, and the numbers are staggering. One district reported the number of affected individuals was 4 to 10 times their current student population.
Whoa.
Yeah.
4 to 10 times. That means they're dealing with like the fallout of data, exposed data for people who haven't even been students in years,
Right.
maybe even decades. So that really drives home how much historical data we're talking about and how deeply this breach cuts.
Okay, so we've got this huge pool of potentially compromised data, a timeline that's shrouded in mystery, and a company response that's leaving a lot to be desired in the transparency department. Where do we even go from here? I mean, what are schools supposed to do? Are they just sitting ducks?
Well, there are definitely things that schools can do, and honestly, they should have been doing them all along. The big one that keeps coming up is multi-factor authentication, or MFA for short.
Right.
Because you know how your banking app makes you enter a code from your phone on top of your password?
Uh-huh.
That's MFA. It's a basic security measure that adds an extra layer of protection,
Okay.
making it much harder for hackers to get in, even if they have stolen credentials. Okay, that makes sense. So why wasn't PowerSchool using MFA on all of its systems? It seems like a no-brainer for a system handling such sensitive data.
You think so, right?
Yeah.
And that's what uh, security experts are criticizing,
Mm-hmm.
this lack of basic security hygiene.
Mm.
But MFA is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
We need to talk about encryption, we need to talk about regular security audits, data loss prevention strategies,
Uh-huh.
and even the potential of using blockchain technology for more secure record management.
Blockchain in education. That's a
Yeah.
new one. We're definitely going to have to unpack that a bit later.
Yeah.
But first, let's zoom out for a second. This breach isn't just about PowerSchool, is it? It feels like it's exposing a much bigger problem in the education sector, like a systemic vulnerability when it comes to data security.
Yeah, you're hitting on a crucial point. This breach is a wake-up call, not just for PowerSchool, but for every school district, every educational institution, every company that handles sensitive student data. It forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
Why are we even keeping such detailed student records for decades?
Yeah.
Are the benefits of holding onto this data really worth the risk, especially in the age of digital vulnerability?
That's a really good question. I mean, what are the benefits of keeping all this data for so long? Is it for historical research, legal reasons?
Yeah.
Or are we just hoarding data because we can? And if we are going to keep it, shouldn't we be doing a much better job of protecting it?
Exactly. And that leads us to another critical question.
Mm.
Are current regulations adequately addressing the challenges of long-term data retention and security, especially in this rapidly evolving digital landscape?
Right.
This breach might be a turning point,
Hmm.
forcing us to reconsider data retention policies
Okay.
and really grapple with the ethical and practical implications of how we manage sensitive data in the digital age.
So we're talking about a potential shift in how we think about data, not just in education, but like across the board. This is about more than just strong passwords and firewalls.
Right.
It's about a fundamental rethinking of our relationship with data in a world where security breaches are becoming, increasingly common.
Precisely. And it's not just about the technical solutions either. It's
Yeah.
about fostering a culture of security awareness at every level,
Okay.
from students and teachers to administrators and policymakers.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem. A massive data breach, a company scrambling to respond, a whole education sector scrambling to catch up.
Right.
But what about the individuals caught in the crossfire? What can they do right now to protect themselves?
That's where things get a little more personal, right?
Right.
Think about it. Someone whose school data was compromised back in, say, the 90s.
Oh, gosh.
They might not even be aware that their information is out there floating around in the digital abyss.
And if they don't know, they can't take steps to protect themselves.
Exactly.
This feels like a ticking time bomb. So what can people do? Where do they even start?
First and foremost, be vigilant. Keep a close eye on your bank accounts and credit card statements. Look for any suspicious activity, any charges you don't recognize.
Okay.
It's also a good idea to check your credit report regularly.
Right.
You can actually get a free copy from each of the 3 major credit bureaus,
Okay.
Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion,
Hmm.
once a year.
So regular monitoring is key. But what if you see something fishy? What then?
That's when you need to act fast. Report any suspected fraud to your bank or credit card company immediately. You might also want to consider placing a fraud alert on your credit file.
Okay.
This basically tells lenders to take extra steps to verify your identity before issuing any new credit in your name. It's an extra layer of protection that can help prevent identity thieves from opening accounts in your name.
This is a lot to digest. We've gone from school record systems to potential identity theft, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We need to dig deeper into what this breach means for individual students, teachers, and families. What are the real world consequences they're facing? How are schools handling the fallout? And most importantly, what can we learn from this to prevent it from happening again?
Let's get into it. This is where it gets really interesting.
You mentioned the real world consequences of this breach. What are we talking about here? What are some of the actual impacts this is having on individuals and schools?
So one of the most immediate concerns is, as we touched on, identity theft. With Social Security numbers and other sensitive information potentially in the wrong hands, Individuals are at a much higher risk of having their identities stolen and used for fraudulent activities.
So we're talking people potentially having their credit ruined, loans taken out in their names, their financial lives just turned upside down.
Exactly. And the long-term impact of that can be, devastating. It can take years to repair that damage to your credit and regain control of your financial identity. This is not just a minor inconvenience. This can have a significant impact on people's lives.
And it's not just the individuals directly affected by the breach that suffer, right?
You're right. Think about the families, especially parents with children whose information might be compromised. I mean, they're understandably anxious. This creates a ripple effect of anxiety and distrust that can be incredibly difficult to deal with.
It's a violation of trust on so many levels. The trust between the school and the families, the trust between the families and the company handling their data. And then there's the impact on the schools themselves. How are they coping with this fallout?
Yeah, schools are now on the front lines,
Yeah.
dealing with a mess that they didn't create. They're responsible for notifying potentially affected individuals, offering credit monitoring services, answering questions from concerned parents and staff. It's a huge burden, both logistically and financially, not to mention the potential legal ramifications and the damage to their reputation.
It's a PR nightmare for these schools. They're trying to educate students, and now they're forced to become cybersecurity experts overnight. It feels like a lose-lose situation.
It highlights the need for proactive measures, for having those strong security protocols in place before a breach happens. It's not just about reacting to an incident. It's about building a culture of security awareness and taking those preventative steps to safeguard sensitive data.
You mentioned blockchain as a potential solution earlier. I'm curious about that. How could blockchain technology actually help schools manage data more securely?
Right, so blockchain is essentially a digital ledger that's distributed across multiple computers. It's incredibly difficult to tamper with, making it a very secure way to store and manage data. In the context of education, blockchain could be used to create tamper-proof student records, verify academic credentials, and even streamline processes like transferring credits between schools.
So it's like having a permanent, unchangeable record of a student's educational journey, one that's secure and accessible only to authorized individuals.
Exactly. And because it's decentralized, there's no single point of failure that hackers can target. So it could really be a game changer for data security in education.
That sounds promising. But is it realistic? Is blockchain technology something that schools can actually implement, in the near future, or is this still pie in the sky thinking?
It's definitely gaining traction. There are actually several pilot programs already underway exploring the use of blockchain in education. There are challenges, of course, like scalability and the need for widespread adoption, but the potential benefits are significant. It's definitely a technology worth watching closely.
Okay, so blockchain is one potential piece of the puzzle. What are some other concrete steps that schools can take to, bolster their defenses and prevent future breaches?
Well, we talked about MFA, and that's crucial, but it's also about implementing robust access controls. This means limiting access to sensitive data to only those who absolutely need it for their job function, using strong, unique passwords, and regularly reviewing and updating permissions.
So it's about being very deliberate and careful about who has access to what. What about the human element? Are there things that teachers and staff can do on a day-to-day basis to, be more security conscious?
Absolutely. Regular security awareness training for all staff is essential. This isn't just about clicking through a boring online module.
Right.
It's about helping staff understand the real-world implications of data breaches, teaching them how to recognize potential threats, and empowering them to follow those best practices for protecting sensitive information.
So it's about creating a culture of security where everyone feels a sense of responsibility for protecting data.
Exactly. It's a collective effort.
Yeah.
Requires ongoing education and reinforcement.
Let's be realistic. Even with the best security measures in place, breaches can still happen.
Yeah.
So what should schools do if they experience a breach? What's the best way to handle the situation?
Having a clear, well-defined incident response plan is critical.
Okay.
This outlines exactly what steps to take in the event of a breach, including containing the damage, assessing the scope, notifying affected individuals, and reporting the incident to the appropriate authorities.
So it's like having a playbook ready to go. So you're not scrambling to figure things out in the middle of a crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A well-rehearsed incident response plan can help schools minimize the damage, regain control of the situation, and recover more quickly from that security incident.
This brings us to another critical aspect of incident response: communication. How should schools communicate with affected individuals and the public in the event of a breach? This feels like a tightrope walk between transparency and potentially creating panic.
Yeah, you're right. It's a delicate balance. But transparency and clear communication are absolutely essential. Schools need to be upfront about what happened, what information was compromised, and what steps they're taking to address the situation. They also need to provide clear, actionable guidance to affected individuals on how to protect themselves.
So it's about being honest, open, and providing timely and helpful information.
Exactly. Effective communication helps maintain trust, even in the midst of a crisis. It can help to minimize anxiety and fear and demonstrates a commitment to taking responsibility and doing the right thing.
All of this points to a broader conversation about data security, not just in education, but across all sectors. It feels like we're at a crossroads where the old ways of doing things are no longer enough. We need a new paradigm, a new way of thinking about data security in a world where our lives are increasingly digital.
You're absolutely right. We need to move beyond reactive responses and compliance-driven approaches to security. We need to adopt a more proactive and holistic strategy that incorporates those advanced technologies, robust policies, ongoing training, and a shared commitment to protecting sensitive data.
So it's about recognizing that data security isn't just an IT problem. It's a fundamental societal issue that requires a collective effort.
Exactly. It's about building a culture of security awareness at every level, empowering individuals to protect themselves, and demanding greater accountability from the organizations we trust with our data.
Speaking of individual empowerment, let's dive into that a bit more. What are some common mistakes that people make online that can, jeopardize their data security? I feel like we all need a refresher on digital hygiene basics from time to time.
Oh, for sure. One of the most common and easily avoidable mistakes is using weak passwords. Or even worse, reusing the same password across multiple accounts.
Ooh, the dreaded password problem. We all know we should be using strong, unique passwords for each account, but let's be honest, it can be tough to keep track of them all.
Absolutely. And that's where password managers come in. They generate and store strong passwords for you, so you only have to remember one master password. It's a simple but effective way to boost your password security.
Password managers, those are definitely a game changer. What about phishing scams? Those seem to be getting more and more sophisticated these days. How can people avoid falling victim to those tricks?
Phishing scams are designed to trick you into giving up personal information or clicking on malicious links. The best defense is a healthy dose of skepticism. Be wary of emails or messages that seem too good to be true, ask for sensitive information out of the blue, or create a sense of urgency.
So don't click on that link promising a free cruise to the Bahamas if you just enter your bank account details.
Exactly. And always verify the sender's identity before clicking on any links or providing any information. If you're unsure, contact the organization directly using a known phone number or email address.
So being cautious and verifying everything is key. It's like the digital equivalent of stranger danger.
That's a good way to put it. In the online world, trust should be earned, not assumed.
Okay, we've covered some individual steps people can take, but let's shift gears back to organizations. Are there any common security pitfalls that they should avoid?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones is neglecting to update software and systems regularly. Security patches are released frequently to address vulnerabilities, and failing to update leaves your systems exposed to attack. It's like leaving your front door unlocked just because you're too busy to turn the key.
So clicking update when that little notification pops up, it's actually important. What about data backups? Are those still a thing in the age of cloud computing?
Absolutely. Having a robust data backup and recovery plan is more critical than ever. In the event of data loss, whether due to a cyber attack or a natural disaster, having those reliable backups can be a lifesaver. It ensures that you can restore your data and get back up and running as quickly as possible.
So backups are like an insurance policy for your data. You might not need them every day, but when you do, you'll be glad you have them.
That's a great way to think about it. They're a safety net that can help you bounce back from those unexpected events.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the specifics of the PowerSchool breach to broader issues of data security in the digital age. Let's bring it back to the education sector for a moment. What are some key takeaways from this incident that schools should keep in mind as they move forward?
I think one major takeaway is that data security in education isn't just an IT issue, it's a core educational issue. That impacts the safety and well-being of students, staff, and families.
So it's about recognizing the profound responsibility that schools and educational institutions have in protecting sensitive student data.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing data security as a fundamental aspect of providing a safe and secure learning environment. This isn't just about compliance or checking boxes. It's about creating that culture of security that permeates every level of the organization.
What else should schools be thinking about? Where should they be focusing their efforts?
Well, they need to move beyond a reactive, compliance-driven approach to security and embrace a more proactive and comprehensive strategy. This includes investing in robust security technologies, fostering a culture of security awareness, developing those strong incident response plans, and staying informed about emerging threats.
So it's about going beyond the bare minimum and taking a proactive and holistic approach to data security.
Absolutely. The stakes are simply too high to settle for anything less.
All right, we're getting close to wrapping up this deep dive. Before we do, let's look ahead. What are some key trends or developments in data security that schools and organizations should be aware of as they, plan for the future?
One major trend is the increasing sophistication and frequency of cyber attacks. Cyber criminals are constantly developing new tactics and techniques.
Right.
So organizations need to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's a constant arms race against the bad guys.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
We need to be vigilant and proactive in our approach to security. This means investing in those advanced security technologies, staying informed about those emerging threats, and continuously adapting our defenses to counter those evolving attack methods.
What else should we be paying attention to?
The rise of cloud computing and the Internet of Things, IoT, is creating new challenges for data security.
Okay.
As more devices and systems become interconnected,
Right.
the attack surface expands exponentially, requiring a more holistic and integrated approach to security.
So it's about recognizing that data security is no longer confined to individual devices or systems. It's about securing the entire ecosystem.
Precisely. We need to think in terms of interconnectedness and interdependence when it comes to data security. This means breaking down traditional silos between IT departments and other parts of the organization and adopting a more collaborative approach that involves everyone.
This brings us to another important point, one that you've touched on before: the need for collaboration and information sharing.
You're absolutely right. We can't tackle these challenges in isolation. Schools, organizations, government agencies, and security experts need to work together to share information, best practices, and resources.
So it's about breaking down silos and fostering a collaborative approach to security.
Exactly. We're all in this together. By working together and sharing our knowledge and expertise, we can collectively raise the bar for data security and create a safer digital world.
All right, let's end this deep dive with a final thought for our listeners. What's one key message you'd like them to take away from our discussion today?
I'd like them to remember that data security is not just an IT issue. It's a societal issue that affects us all. We need to be aware of the risks, take proactive steps to protect ourselves and our information, and demand stronger security measures from the organizations we trust with our data.
So it's about individual empowerment, collective action, and a shared commitment to creating a safer and more secure digital world.
That's it in a nutshell.
And it's not just about protecting ourselves, right? It's about advocating for stronger data security practices across all sectors, especially those that handle sensitive information like, student data. We need to be informed, we need to ask questions, and we need to hold those organizations accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to demand greater transparency and accountability from these organizations and hold them to a higher standard,
Right.
of data protection. This isn't just about complying with regulations, it's about doing what's right,
Right.
what's ethical, and what's necessary to safeguard that information that's been entrusted to them.
This PowerSchool breach, it really serves as a wake-up call, a stark reminder that data security is an ongoing challenge, and it requires constant vigilance and a commitment to, continuous improvement. It's not something you can just set and forget. It's an ongoing process of assessment, adaptation, and evolution.
It's a journey, not a destination. We need to be constantly adapting and evolving those security practices to stay ahead of emerging threats. That threat landscape is constantly shifting, so our defenses need to be just as dynamic and adaptable.
Well said. This has been a fascinating and thought-provoking deep dive into the PowerSchool data breach and its broader implications. We've explored the technical details, the human impact, the systemic vulnerabilities, and the potential solutions.
Yeah, it really highlights that interconnected nature of data security in our increasingly digital world. It's not just about the technology, it's about people, It's about processes, and it's about a shared responsibility for safeguarding sensitive information.
I think our listeners are walking away with a much deeper understanding of the complexities of this issue and the steps they can take to protect themselves and advocate for stronger data security measures. It's about awareness, it's about education, it's about action.
I hope so. Knowledge is power. And by empowering individuals with information, we can collectively create a safer and more secure digital future for everyone. It's about recognizing that data security isn't just an IT issue, it's a human issue, it's a societal issue, and ultimately, it's a matter of trust.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the PowerSchool data breach and its implications. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay empowered.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, data security is everyone's responsibility. Let's work together to make the digital world a safer place for all.